Hi, Greg.
Hey,
Hey, man.
Welcome, man. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you. I've been pestering you to come on for a while because we've become friends over this last year. And every time I see you, we have these really good conversations where like everything is fucked and how do we raise our sons?
Right.
And sometimes a little bit of Bitcoin. And
A little bit. Yeah, maybe.
And you're hugely well read. You've recommended loads of books to me that I haven't even got round to. But I've been pestering you for ages. I was like, you've got to come on the show.
Right.
I want to have one of those conversations we have over tacos.
Right.
And everyone else to hear it.
Yeah. We're big on Mexican food.
Big on Mexican food.
I'm big on Mexican food. Yeah.
And you've just sponsored Inter Miami.
I got the jersey on.
And my hero Beckham.
Philippe and Walton, they basically made the big commit. So we're...
And it sounds like you're a good omen for them, first game.
Yeah, they totally crushed it, kind of.
Thanks for my shirt. I'm going to share this. I got a present. I got to share this because I don't even know what camera I'm looking at. Look, I've got a Beckham shirt, my absolute hero.
It's pro. There's like 16 cameras here.
Yeah. Danny made a good point. Why is it not signed?
He heard I was going to be on. He said, I want to do it in person.
Well played. How are you, man? You well?
Awesome. It's been a great year. It's been a great 5 years. It seems to be, the world keeps getting more interesting, but in our space, it's just like, transformative. Everything's transformative for me. And like the Bitcoin introduction to the world has changed almost everything in my life. So I think same for you.
Same for me, absolutely.
It's not
very
just
lucky.
It's not just good investment, which is like my role at XBTO Humla Ventures is investing in companies and these projects and stuff. But that's just like the tip. Everything in my life is transformed around this change in the world. So
yeah,
it's and mainly the relationships. Like we become good friends, and there's so many other people in the space that I would consider my closest friends, and I only met them in the last 5 years.
Yeah,
so it's like, okay, amazing.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's changed my career. Obviously, I do this now rather than advertising, and it's changed my finances.
Not really working, but kind of just like chilling and hanging out talking with us and stuff.
They do all the work. These people here, Emma over there.
Totally kidding, by the way. Just to the powers that be. We know Peter works harder than pretty much anyone, and it's really good for the space. What you do.
You know what? I used to. I don't have to work as hard anymore because you got a team and it makes a difference.
Easier, yeah.
But it's changed careers, changed finances, and when I say finances, approach to money and consideration of spend and future.
Yeah.
I'm not there yet on the diet. I've tried, but it changes a lot of things, man. But we've had like some really good conversations, and like I said, I just wanted to get you here, and I want.
I'm grateful, really.
No, anytime, man.
Super grateful.
You should do a bit of a background so people. Like I know your background now because we've hung out, but
right.
Some of the people listening and watching, they might not know you. So
right. Okay, there's two backgrounds. There's me, and then there's me with XBTO. And how we've kind of come to where we are, and even who XBTO is, because I know we're kind of really well known in the market transformation space, like the Bitcoin liquidity space and the institution. Because we're like XBTO is the first institutional liquidity provider in the Bitcoin space and the crypto space to some degree early on. And so Philippe and Walton founded XBTO. End of 2014, formalized in 2015, started already trading Bitcoin on many of the major exchanges. They built the whole infrastructure because back then you couldn't get any infrastructure from prime brokerage or anything like that. My background goes back to growing up near Silicon Valley, starting my first company when I was 21, going back to business school, working on Wall Street, doing M&A. I became good friends with Walton. 20 years ago, we've done like 4 or 5 projects together. I met Philippe and Walton back in early 2017, where we started talking about. They made an investment into venture capital, and they were looking at their second one. We started talking about, okay, well, maybe this should be a formalized part of XBTO. Then I joined by the very beginning of 2018, and we formalized the first fund where we started investing in companies. And that included, the first one was Deribit, and then X Margin and Paradigm Trading and Luca, and maybe up to 20 companies now.
Wow.
And going fantastically. I mean, like, essentially top decile of venture capital performance. And
I know.
I'm supposed to make some disclaimers here, like past performance is not, that kind of stuff. But really,
this is not financial advice.
This is not financial advice, and my opinions are my own. Definitely not the opinions in the firm. But really, it's been a really fun ride. Philippe is the CEO, and just amazing visionary. And Walton, I've known 20 years. He's our CIO and co-founder, and one of the smartest guys I ever met. So the firm is just an amazing culture. We're kind of like behind the scenes in a lot of the institutional parts of the community for many years now. And now we sponsored the IMCF. We moved to Miami. Our headquarters is now Miami.
I've been to the office.
Yeah.
You invited me down.
Reasonably okay office. Woo. Yeah.
Got a little beach down there.
Yeah, it's like right on the water. And so XBTO has now evolved. So now we're, edging up towards 100 people. We have offices in Paris, in New York, headquartered in Miami, Bermuda. We have a product, Streaming Markets, where we provide pricing and various things on the streaming parts of all the crypto markets. We have an options desk. We've been doing, Walton and Philippe come from SAC Capital, where they were basically one of these, foremost hedge funds. So we do a lot of algorithmic trading, market making. We're a proprietary investor. And my role doing the private investing, all the venture capital and private deals and negotiations around partnerships and stuff, means that we now started, since I came on, to now take outside capital for investing stuff. So now we're raising we had such good performance, people start asking us to invest. Now we're raising new fund to do early stage stuff. And just the deal flow, a lot of really great investors coming into our our partnership. It's just great times.
Yeah, man, it's great time for everyone. It's been incredible year, and I just feel like every time I take a step back and think about where we are with the Bitcoin ecosystem, it's like, holy shit, look where we were 4 years ago and look where we are now and look where we're going. We had a president tweeting last night when buying the dip. El Salvador up to 700 Bitcoin, amazing. Yeah. It's in a very interesting place, but kind of, I think one of the things that's really on my mind, which is why I like talking to you, is when we have those conversations over tacos, is that there's a lot to consider about in the world, and you and I share this lens where it's not just about how do I get by in this world, but what does it mean for our sons? We've got sons of pretty much the same age.
My son's 17, Elias.
Yeah, mine's 17, and they're both well, no, yours is more orange-pilled, I think, than mine.
Elias is really into this, Bitcoin maximalist, and he's coding Rust. I'm super proud of him. And super smart guy.
My son's an artist, and he's like, whatever.
I'll definitely be working for my son in a decade or two.
We hope he'll be retired. But no, so we have we're thinking in that separate lens about the world that they're going to live in and what's it going to mean for them. And one of the things that's really interesting about the Bitcoin is that some of them are very good at seeing the future. They have crystal balls where I'm this vision of the world, they talk about hyper Bitcoinization or the breakdown of the state or the delegit. Yesterday, a couple of days ago, I interviewed somebody who said the great thing about Bitcoin is it's going to delegitimize the rent seekers in government and academia.
Right.
And I think they're foreseeing a collapse or a world shift, which I don't, because I live in this comfortable space. Think, everything's fine, everything will be how it always was. But the world's gone through really
transformation.
Times, and we're in a transformation now.
It's amazing.
I see it's happening.
Yeah.
I see the good that's going to come. I fear some of the implications, but I don't see it the way other people see it.
Fear is the mind killer.
I know, man. I know.
To quote Dune.
How do you take him where we are at the moment? Because there is weird stuff. I mean, the Evergrande thing that's happening now.
Yeah.
Could have a Chinese version of The Big Short.
Yeah, I mean, I think the world is going through massive transformations. I think we're quite lucky. I think Bitcoin and our side of the world gives us some insulation to realize that we're kind of protecting ourselves both financially and mentally. I think it's a mental pill as well as an orange pill, you might call it. But and the transformation of markets is the first step of that. I think that the whole world's transforming, and XBTO Humla Ventures, we're investing in the transformation of the markets, but the whole world is changing. And that's what I think the fear comes from. And if you look back, like in the 20s, before 1920, before it was in 1917 when they made the Federal Reserve Bank, there's no Federal Reserve Bank back then. 1900, all currencies in the world were on gold standard. So you didn't have exchange rates. You basically just, Rockefeller had a 55 country company with the telegraph, one accounting books. He managed 55 countries before the television or the telephone, before planes.
Yeah,
you can imagine. And then they took people, they partially came off the gold standard, and then Bretton Woods came, which was a massive transformation in military strategy from the United States and the dollar. And then in 1971, when Nixon took us off the gold standard, that last 50 years has been an experiment. So I think what we're seeing now is not necessarily a transformation forward, but a transformation where Bitcoin has introduced a series of like catalysts for the global mentality to realize that there needs to be some fixing. And it might be going back in some cases. It looks like it's going forward, but it's going backwards.
But it's going back to a standard.
Something. I think that people don't realize, I think what we didn't realize before is that technology is not always pushing us forward. There's a lot of things that we're now realizing weren't that great technology. Social media is not necessarily making children happier.
You see the Facebook thing?
No, I didn't see it.
So Facebook...
Even though I'm on Facebook 24/7. No.
Well, there was a Facebook study. Danny, can you have a look it up? But I don't know the details, but essentially Facebook ran a study, and it's quite interesting because there was an interview, I think it was Jonathan Haidt on Rogan, where he was talking, he did a presentation,
right?
And it was a graph showing young girls' incidents of self-harm,
right,
and suicide.
Oh,
and Lord. It was quite a steady chart, and then there was like this uptick, this hockey curve.
Social media,
yeah.
Instagram probably, and
Instagram was the main culprit.
Probably less for Facebook because I think Facebook is really our generation.
Yeah, I think it's mainly Instagram, and so my daughter is not allowed Instagram. She fights me over it, but I'm just not having her exposed to this kind of pressure.
Yeah, that's probably nice.
And it's something I've agreed with her mum, and we've stuck to it. It's also not great for boys, but it's much worse for girls.
Yeah.
But Facebook did a study. What's the detail?
Snapchat too.
It was an internal study that found that it was damaging to children's mental health.
And they buried the study.
Yeah.
Who did?
Facebook. So
surprising.
they knew. Well, of course. We knew.
Because they're like altruistic. So why would they do something like that?
Well, I wonder what the obligation is there when they do a study like that. Is the obligation to release it to the public and let people know it, or is the obligation to change the product?
Well, ethics of technology is a super interesting subject. There was a famous case early day in Ford when they found out that the Ford Pinto had a chance of blowing up, and then they did a calculation internally of how many deaths would come from the Ford Pinto, and they calculated, okay, we can afford to pay those lawsuits off, and
wow.
And then it went into production anyways. So it was like a major thing. So this is like the same kind of thing. It's even worse though, I would say.
Well, it reaffirms my point that social media is dangerous for children.
Oh yeah.
But therefore, it's also dangerous for adults, really. We have a lot of mentally unstable people shouting all day on Twitter.
Well, it's like television is the instigator of these new echo chambers. And then people take this like one-liners that they learn on television, which is the devil's medicine. Television is just like everything dumbed down to simple liners that people can remember that have no basis in actual, the depth of the knowledge. And then they go into Facebook where they can... it basically starts to rebound, that kind of...
Well, I think we were out for dinner last night, and one of the things we were talking about is that one of the few places that you can you can fix this is in long form conversations like this, Clubhouse, Twitter Spaces.
Right.
It feels like if you're having a conversation with people, you won't. Yeah, I mean, last night at dinner we had a Bitcoin maxi and an Ethereum maxi sit down, have dinner, and by the end of the night they've exchanged phone numbers. They're going to hang out. But like on Twitter, I mean, those two maybe not, but on Twitter,
maybe not those two.
It can be arguments.
Yeah.
But this kind of, and one of the other issues is a lot of the people I notice that recognize the problems of social media and media, when they tweet about it, they also do it in an inflammatory way themselves. So they're contributing to it. They're recognizing it, but the social media is rewarding them for being inflammatory about it. And I'm a hypocrite at times, I know, but I do think...
Well, in person, you have that kind of social feedback. Like, as I'm saying a sentence, you see the face of the other person reacting to what you're saying, and then you have this response. On the internet, you just have this... You're just essentially shouting out to the masses. You have no idea. So people are trying to get attention, I think. A lot of it's approval seeking or just like attention seeking, I guess.
And I don't think some people realize the consequence.
No.
You know, someone might tweet something out like about a person, be particularly critical personally, and they get the rallying support of the people watching, but they don't understand.
Well, they find the 6 other people that agree with them, and then that becomes...
Or 600, or 6,000.
Yeah.
But they don't understand how that person who sees it might feel. I put a thing to Danny earlier, a tweet, and I didn't end up sending it in the end, but there's some people have been, say, criticizing this, and other people will respond and say, look, this is just people being mean on Twitter. But I think if you say, oh, it's just people being mean on Twitter, you perhaps haven't been subjected to like continual harassment, abuse, which does happen. There's a couple of people I know within the Bitcoin community who I'm watching now getting harassed and abused.
Right.
And I think sometimes it gets normalized.
Right.
Oh, this is just people being mean on Twitter. You need to get thicker skin. It's like, well, can't we flip that and say, no, this is not acceptable. We challenge that person not to be a dick.
Right. Well, it seems that standing up on the internet is not so easy to do, I guess. I mean, and then people see this, like they see the 6 people or 600 people, and then socially people just think everyone thinks that way because they just see the 6 responses and they identify with it. It could be, and that kind of like, that's actually the interesting that if you kind of loop it back to like our business, it's the same with markets, there's some, like there could be some sort of change in markets for a new company or a new opportunity, and like everyone jumps on board, even though it's a bad idea or a good idea. There can be too much social proof either way.
Yeah.
But I think, it seems to me that Twitter is, depending on who you follow, changes the whole experience for you.
Yeah. And how much time you spend it. Somebody earlier put, I just had a 48-hour Twitter fast. He said, I felt great.
Yeah.
I was like, that's such an interesting point.
Yeah. Well, fasting is I think the concept is that's a really good idea, actually. I mean, with Twitter, for me, it's like it's a better news source, but it's also a place where you can get down to rabbit holes. Because if you curate who you follow, you can basically get much better firsthand knowledge or firsthand news if you follow and read it the right way and search after that. Like, I like to read books. I like to read books. I like to read deep dive content. So you see the initial part on Twitter, and then that's where I get ideas of what to look at. I haven't watched television since I was in my 20s, I think.
No telly? Do you do a little bit of Netflix?
Well, Netflix binge watching for sure.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones types of things. I can't wait to see Asimov.
What's Asimov?
The new Foundation series. I think it's on Apple or something.
What's that? Game of Thrones spin-off?
Asimov. You don't know Amazon. Asimov is like the most famous science fiction writer of all time. You got to read the Foundation series.
Oh, hold on. This is the thing coming out on Apple. This was the precursor to Star Wars.
Not precursor. It's the Star Wars kind of took a lot of ideas from Asimov, who's the most prolific science fiction writer of all time.
Yeah, I've seen the trailer. Yeah. There's 2 trailers. It looks insane.
The book is epic. The books are amazing. Really, if it's produced well, it should be one of the best things ever. Yeah.
Do you watch any of the documentaries? Because I just watched this 5-part on Netflix about 9/11 Turning Point. It was very well made.
I haven't seen that one yet.
It's really good. It just covers like what happened, why they went to Afghanistan, then into Iraq, and how that undid Afghanistan, and how we get to where we are today, like the shit show of the exit.
No, I need to watch that. I haven't watched the documentary. I like documentaries, but I tend to read nonfiction books, and then if it's Netflix like movie or something like that. I watched the good one was there's a Netflix one on the samurai and the introduction of gunpowder. I mean, you read Sovereign Individual, I think, right? So
Breed Love, it completely changed the logic of violence with the introduction of gunpowder.
Right. So the gunpowder revolution is this whole concept of the returns on violence being transformed. If you watch it's like a nonfiction history of the samurais. Actually, the whole story is about one samurai clan got gunpowder first and took over Japan.
Oh wow!
It's happening in this. That's
a documentary.
Story. Yeah, it's on Netflix. Yeah, definitely see it. It's not. It's like done kind of dramatized and then dramatized fact. But it's the same. It's this whole concept that the gunpowder changed all the returns of violence. And you see it right there. They got all the peasants and they just handed them guns to go with the samurais, and they went and kill all the.
It's so interesting because I'm later on today. I'm interviewing Jack Murphy. I don't know if you know him. It's just an interesting guy. He was with Tim Pool yesterday.
Okay.
And they were talking about the government mandates to be, all companies with 100 employees, which is just a weird arbitrary decision.
Because there's no other arbitrary decisions in the governments these days.
Let's just make it 100, and you have to be vaccinated. Or I think the firm is fined $14,000 per person. I think that's it.
That's very strange.
But I might not have that bit correct. But they were talking about this fines and that basically the government can just go into your bank account and take the money.
Wow.
And Jack Murphy said,
"Can be a fast move towards."
Tim Pool said this was it. He said, "Your AR-15s can't stop them stealing your private property from your bank accounts." Right. And I was like screaming. I was like, this is why you need Bitcoin. This is the moment that Bitcoin needs to be in the conversation.
Bitcoin fixes this.
Bitcoin fixes this.
It really, and that's we just invested in this company Bitwave, which is like accounting for companies that have Bitcoin or crypto on their treasury. Mm-hmm. That's their whole mission. And earlier we did Luca, which is fund administrators and stuff like that as well. Companies start to, there's a lot of reasons to have, stable coins on your balance sheet for speed and weekend transfer. We've done some investments, or we've had investments where, or we've done like market investment or trades, and they have to be done on weekends and evenings. And, the normal banking system, nothing.
Yeah.
Right. And if you have this on your balance sheet, one, you can avoid the government taking penalties on their own, and two, you can operate outside of this legacy financial system. That's the whole thesis of my business. The Humla Ventures, the XBTO Humla Ventures, which is our venture capital, is that we're about to enter. Have already entered market transformation. So there's a market transformation happening, and I think we're talking everything's going to change. Everything's going to change. But the core of it, like you saw The Big Short, which is an epic movie, and you saw like that. That's actually, that movie is really interesting because that's the beginning. That's the moment that inspired Satoshi to launch his. That maybe not. He knew that was coming, but because he worked on it some time. But that's when he launched Bitcoin, and now we see all these legacy banks with millions of lines of COBOL code and running by 70-year-old guys that have no incentive to change their company. And then meanwhile, there needs to be thousands of companies to exist for our vision of Bitcoin. And I think we said earlier, like if Bitcoin is going to be the people's money, then layer 0 are these other coins like, Cardano and Solana and Ethereum. Those are like layer 0. That's kind of like the application layer. And then below that, you have all the shit coins. And that's essentially what my idea is.
We'll come back to that thesis because I just want to...
I have to say, it's the people's Silicon Valley.
People are going to be triggered by Cardano.
Yeah, okay, yeah. True.
We can put that in the shitcoin category. Yeah. So the point I wanted to come back to is like when you talked earlier about the samurais, the ones who discovered gunpowder. They're the ones who took over all the samurai.
No, there's one samurai.
One samurai.
One samurai clan got gunpowder first.
Yeah, and
then they just went on and kicked ass all through Japan.
Well, if you look at the banks, the banks are. They've had a cushy, but like the first,
they have a chance.
The first bank that discovers allows the ability to have a Bitcoin account next to your bank account with the ability to store your private keys if you need to, but also allows for stable coins and moves into this real world. They will be the winner. But what's going to happen is I don't think it's going to be one of these legacies. I think it's going to be a strike or I spoke to some guy the other day.
Or some hybrid, maybe.
Yeah, some hybrid. Or I think there'll be some consolidation. But I
think Fidelity's been really aggressive in picking it up soon. I mean, like, it's not, I mean, we don't know if it's going to be like slowly then suddenly, you know?
Yeah.
You know,
but they're avoiding the reality.
Yeah.
Whereas you can see someone like Bukele in El Salvador getting criticized by economists and mainstream media.
Yeah. What else can they say?
What else can they say? But like, he is most likely going to be proven correct. In 3 months, he has released an application. Whether or not you agree that it's centralized, the point is he's released an app that banks everyone in the country who hasn't got a bank. They can download the Chivo app and they can accept dollars and Bitcoin and they can move between them and they can get their own wallets and move off.
He just gave everyone in the country a bank account.
And
their own bank account.
Yeah. And with a country with 70% of the population do not have a bank account.
But now they do.
Now they do.
You can't say that fact anymore.
And they can, but they can increase their trade. You know, like you've got local businesses like shops, pupuserias, but maybe someone there in El Salvador is producing a good that can be exported. And they've got that facility now. He's put 50 Chivo machines in the US where there are densities of Salvadorans.
Oh, for like remittance.
Yeah. Where there are densities of Salvadorans who can send money straight back.
Genius.
Yeah, routing around Western Union. Western Union admitted they're going to lose $400 million of business.
Just from El Salvador.
Just from El Salvador.
Wow.
You know, he's encouraged Bitcoin companies all want to invest there. All the Bitcoiners are taking holidays.
Everyone I know is talking about buying a house in El Salvador.
Yeah.
Not to like move the markets or anything like that. But seriously, it's...
But he's foreseeing this. So like, I know there's discussions at the moment whether or not he's a dictator, a benevolent dictator, or just whatever, to be seen. But he is moving the needle forward for that country. He's recognized this market transformation. And
doesn't he have like 97% approval rate or
something like
something
that.
Crazy high?
But that makes it easy to do things that might prove to be a mistake in the future.
Could be,
but to be seen. But the point is, outside of that, he has moved the needle forward. He's recognized this transformation.
Yeah.
In having Article 7 in the Bitcoin law.
Okay.
The reason I spoke to him about this, and he said, I did this because I've got 5 banks here. They're all billion-dollar banks. He said, if I don't put this in the law, they don't accept Bitcoin because they're banks. Now, every one of them has to provide every service to be paid for in Bitcoin. They have to do it.
Yeah.
And that's on top of Starbucks, McDonald's.
It was awesome to see McDonald's. Like I saw on Twitter, someone showed their McDonald's bill. They have to accept. So now you have like...
Dude, it's on the screen. You know the screens where you order?
Yeah.
I thought you'd go to the till, they'll give you a QR code, which you can, but you can actually pay on the screen. It pops up a open note and you can scan the QR code. I was like, and if they can do that there on that screen, that software's global.
Yeah.
So he's got global companies now accepting Bitcoin, Walmart's, and they did it in 3 months.
Yeah.
They did it quicker than the exchanges have accepted Lightning.
That's
what
true,
I'm saying.
A little bit.
You can move quick.
A little more power there.
Well, yeah, but you can move quick. It's possible to do it.
Yeah.
And he's transformed a whole country in 3 months to be a Bitcoin nation. Whatever you think of him or whatever, it's fucking impressive. And he's stepped ahead of them all.
If they can see some serious traction, not traction, but like benefits to the people, you know, who knows what they will. I mean, like, I think for the world, there needs to be a second country.
Yeah, agree.
I mean, like, there's a really neat thing on leadership and I do some lecturing at the university on negotiation leadership and stuff, and it's the follower that defines the leader. Like, we need someone to follow him in this way. So it'd be good he makes enough traction to really pull another emerging market, leader into that.
Well, we're getting
close. That would be important, yeah.
Cuba and Ukraine are both. They've not made it legal tender, but they've legalized the ownership of the asset.
Right.
There's a guy in Paraguay who's he's running for presidency. He says he will make it legal tender if it is.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like a platform, as a platform?
As a platform. Like,
that'll be interesting if it's like a leadership platform in some countries.
What do you think? I mean, it's what Ted Cruz is doing, right?
Is he saying that?
Well, I don't think he's saying it.
I don't think he can go that far.
What I'm saying is I think
he definitely became out as pro-crypto.
Yeah, and I think he did it because he recognized it's a very Texas idea, and it's good for votes. I don't believe he just suddenly was orange pilled overnight.
Good for money too. There's a lot of people with significant balance sheets that want Bitcoin to succeed.
But if that's the route to orange pill him, that's great. And then I think it's is it Costa Rica? There's a presidential candidate. They tried to orange pill at the moment.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm saying like it feels like the second domino isn't too far away.
Maybe.
Feels like.
Maybe. I think that, there's dark forces though,
Yeah.
You have major countries and major governmental organizations which are coming out against that. So, and they have a lot of power. We've seen Americans' power and IMF's power. All these they may or may not accept it or like it or whatnot. But and they're really run by people that don't fully understand the implications yet. So.
Or maybe they do. That's why they're
or maybe they do.
Forces.
Yeah. Could be that they do.
I think us Bitcoin is a powerful force.
But that's really interesting because if you believe in like Bitcoin as a money, or you believe in Bitcoin as internet of money, it's like a gun. In the gunpowder revolution, just take it full circle, which is like, the gun is not a political instrument. It's just a tool that you use or not. So they may hate it now, but they may realize in a month or a year or 10 years that, I should be using this tool or this weapon to make me stronger.
Well, the interesting thing about the US as well, my guess is that has one of the highest densities of Bitcoin ownership.
Sure. I'm guessing, yeah.
Got a lot of companies here, a lot of investment.
Yeah.
They're ahead of everyone else. And by over-regulating, they're going to push the money and the companies into other jurisdictions.
Could be. I think that this is a critical point. If you look at the last 12 months of Bitcoin and even further crypto involvement, you've seen, especially Bitcoin. You've seen Wall Street really start to accept it. XBTO, we've invested in an international bank. We've seen Ray Dalio, Stan Druckenmiller, Mass Mutual, MicroStrategy, Tesla. Dan Tapiero has raised a fund just investing in Bitcoin companies. Or crypto companies. Wall Street has really started to accept this, and that's where this transformation is going to start. Basically, and that means a lot, because that means that there's so much bought in to the power base, the money power base, that can basically influence both people and governments in a different way than it did before those last 24 months.
We should do your crypto thesis then. I interrupted you on.
Oh, yeah? Can do it. What's my crypto thesis? Let's talk about it.
It's interesting because, and you were telling us that beforehand, but it's come at an interesting time where me and Danny this week, this is the first time we've hung out together. We've worked together for 3 years and we've talked a lot.
So does he get a promotion now, or is he more?
He's just had one.
Okay,
he just had one. This is it.
Good job, Danny.
We've been talking a lot about like Bitcoin, crypto, Bitcoin versus crypto.
Right. What does it mean?
Well, what does it mean? And not only what does it mean, what is the best way to approach it to help people understand Bitcoin and move forward to the future? I'm a Bitcoiner. Yeah. I only hold Bitcoin. I can think of scenarios where I maybe own Monero and perhaps need the use of a stablecoin, but really I just use Bitcoin for now.
Yeah,
I don't see
stablecoins are important.
No, I get that they're important, but I haven't had a need for them.
Yeah, I see them as the bridge.
Fine.
Yeah,
and I can see a definite use for someone in Argentina.
A big bridge.
But I can see a use for someone in Argentina wanting to hold some dollar stable coins.
Sure. But it's this whole bank account thing is another reason. Yeah. And that goes deep into deep finance. There's a lot of things in the financial world which are changing on lending and industry supporter.
I was talking to Kevin O'Leary about it the other day, but just to get where I was saying,
stay on my thesis.
So I've been very much a Bitcoiner. I've on the spectrum of maximalist
We've
to toxicist. Well, no, but I've been fully toxic, yelling at shitcoiners, calling everything a shitcoin.
Yeah, that's great.
It gets tiring, and having traveled, spent time with people and talking through it, I actually sometimes think, what is the net result? If the net result of yelling at people or criticizing shitcoins does not stop them investing in altcoins, but pushes them away from Bitcoin, is the net result worse? I'm stand by
do they really push? I mean, they're already away.
But do you bring them back by having created this narrative that Bitcoin is boom? Look, Bitcoin wins anyway. I think all roads lead to Bitcoin.
Could be.
But for your own mental health, career, and trying to help support Bitcoin, are you better?
Well, Bitcoin needs the that's one of the, like Michael Saylor's comment, I mean, and saying, it needs those cyber hornets. It needs the people, and they act just like Amazon's 1,000 employees that just do everything for Amazon, or Google's 1,000 employees that did that, early on, because there's no employees of Bitcoin, right? There's all these people that support it. And Bitcoin is the strongest network. It's never. There was a really neat post by Jameson Lott the other day where it was Paulo from Tether, I think it was. He said that he had been at Bitfinex, where they were testing all the different nodes, and Bitcoin is the only one they never have to touch. The other ones they have to reset every month or two. So it does have some history as being the strongest. And if you're like me or like you, we believe that it could become international money, or an international, central bank money, or even could be one of those things. I believe it will, but I mean, there's a lot of things that can change in life, and I learned that personally. But then you have.
Well, is the node
you
the
need
best?
Innovation also.
But is the node the Bitcoin node the best because Bitcoin has amazing core developers working on it who are well funded, or is it because of
I think
cyber hornets?
No, I think it's
holding people to account.
It's the purpose and the mentality.
Yeah.
So when you think of when we just did a visioning session at XBTO, and we worked on core purpose and what's our values of the company, like what do we believe in as people, and then we move quickly into what's our goal for 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I think Bitcoin, the definition of Bitcoin is that its thesis is move glacially slow and designed for inevitability. That's the Bitcoin thesis. And then you have everything else is Silicon Valley method, which is design hyper fast, break that shit, make it work, work on the financing, work on new ideas, which is useful because what happens is you have these layer zeros that we called, and I won't mention the word that the one that you didn't want me to mention, but you have these.
You can say Cardano.
You could bleep that out earlier.
No, you can say Cardano. There are. I understand. I'm not going to pick a winner when you say this conversation, but
I don't know the winner. I mean, none of us know what's going to win or not.
Yeah.
I think we feel that. I mean, I think that thesis makes Bitcoin hard to beat. Mm. It's hard to. There's a famous saying: it's hard to beat someone that never gives up. And Bitcoin's never going to give up. Mm. Then these other things are innovation clusters for applications, because Bitcoin's not designed to have applications on top of its layer one. You need block streams, Liquid, or you need Lightning Network, or you need a couple other things. And now we have Taproot, which is allowing smart contracts, so it's getting closer. But why did that happen? Because the Bitcoin core realized that Ethereum and all these other layer twos are getting a lot of traction by having really all the smart contracts already there. And so I look at it, to repeat the thesis is that Bitcoin is the people's future money, or even the bank's money. It's the global potential solid asset, people's money, we would say. And then the layer zeros, or layer ones, sorry, it's not layer zero. Layer ones are the people's application layer, decentralized, or don't want to get an argument. Yeah, permissionless application layers, which is amazing. But Bitcoin is a permissionless application, like Internet of Money, I would say. Mm-hmm. So Bitcoin is the Internet of Money, the people's Internet of Money. Next is the permissionless application layer, permissionless. And then the shitcoins are the people's, like Silicon Valley. It's the people's innovation system, where anyone permissionlessly.
Without permission?
Is that a word? Without permission?
Permissionlessly?
Permissionlessly? Can we make up a word?
We'll
make up a word.
Yeah.
So people can permissionlessly. people without permission can raise a bunch of capital.
Yeah.
Have a bunch of people working. If it's a great idea or if it has a lot of support, have more people working on it. Test ideas. They might. I mean, like there needs to be regulation. There needs to be. Our firm is very much a pro-regulation, do it the right way type of firm. We're an institutional player. But in the VC fund that I run and the new one that I'm raising, we're looking for people that break things also, because that's where good ideas germinate.
Well, let's pause on that. Why pro-regulation? Because obviously there's people in the Bitcoin world who hate regulation. They're going to go, fuck this guy.
Pro-regulation. Anarchic capitalists.
What does it mean to be pro-regulation?
I'm pro-rules. Let's put it that way. Like, you can't win let's say you were on the pitch for football, or soccer, for the Americans. I live in Europe now for 12 years, so I can say football with a straight
I knew exactly what you meant.
Exactly.
I wasn't thinking of the egg.
Everyone in the room is British, so I'm like, they're getting used to my...
No, he's a Yank.
Oh, Yank, good.
I'll take the upgrade.
Yeah, great. Upgrade, yeah. We have the upgraded language, accent, so... So imagine a football pitch, but instead of having rules, you just said, okay, go and play. You can't play a game without rules, right? So it's not that I want lots of regulation, it's that I want the governments to make a claim. Okay, you're going to be a government, you want to have Bitcoin, you want to have rules around Bitcoin, let's hear them. Make the list. Okay, then this is not the country for me. I'll go to this country. Or this is not the place where I should domicile my business. I'll go to this country. I mean, like, the game is up. I mean, basically, we're at this moment of transformation in transformational markets. And like, our fund is international. We have investments in Unicoin in India, Relay Pay in Australia. We're about to make a Nigerian investment this month. South America, Europe, Northern Europe, Bermuda, United States, Silicon Valley, New York City. We're totally agnostic with location. And the jig is up.
Has COVID accelerated the transformation because companies have realized they do not need to have an office?
I think for sure we were already on that thesis.
Yeah.
I mean, like day one, we've been a fairly remote, we do have offices, so we go, you need to be around people.
Yeah.
But, and our planning was like the day that COVID lockdown happened, we had zero break in our trading systems, in our firm, our weekly meetings, all these things. Nothing changed because we were ready for that. That's how we already operate.
Right.
But I think that the world is at the cusp of this transformation, which is markets are getting permissionless, and trading is, it's a bunch of new technology, and which government is more ready and less ready? They got to get their shit together.
Yeah.
And they got to make rules, which is why I say pro-regulation, which is, and I think U.S. has been quite good, actually. Maybe some people disagree.
Way better than Europe.
Yeah, Europe is a disaster right now in their understanding of Bitcoin and crypto and what to do next, and the innovation system. Yeah.
Back to the thesis, because
I like Europe for the European powers.
Me too.
I like it there. I have a passport there, so it's it's a good place.
It's exactly look, we can compare.
And I want to help them invest more.
Yeah.
So,
And we can compare and contrast Europe and the US because there are certain differences.
Yeah.
But just back on the thesis, the thing I like about the thesis is what you were saying is that sometimes, like, where things happen in crypto world, they don't happen in Bitcoin, and then they come to Bitcoin and people suddenly like it.
Right.
You go to my YouTube comments and people are like, "Oh, now it's on Bitcoin, you like it." I think this idea that that like the crypto world is this place to test innovation. You figure out what works, what doesn't, and then it comes to Bitcoin. It's kind of interesting because
it could be.
Yeah,
we're talking about almost $3 trillion market now.
Yeah,
and like 1/3 of that is Bitcoin, right? So,
but the idea that, for example, you've got the security tokens starting to appear on Liquid now. You've got NFTs starting to appear on Liquid.
Yeah.
The idea that these things can appear on Lightning. I think the idea isn't so much about, it's on Bitcoin, I like it. It's on Ethereum, I hate it. It's more like my implicit trust in the Bitcoin base chain.
How trustworthy is the chain?
Yeah, and the longevity. So so for example, we've seen something like Uniswap be hugely successful.
Yep.
I foresee it's more likely that we get a version of people trading real stocks.
Yeah.
The companies that would invest in that and perhaps would trust it built on a Bitcoin layer a bit more than they would trust built on a
maybe
smart contract platform, because perhaps for the longevity.
Taproot is smart contract platform, right?
True. So, but I'm thinking just because
of the Liquid has that as well.
Well, the uptime and longevity. So if you look at we've had the uptime failures of Solana and Ethereum and recently, I just think perhaps if it can be done in a more robust way on Bitcoin, people would trust it more.
So I think technically, I mean, you're in the bubble too. We're in the Bitcoin. Like, we were just, we were at the parties this weekend, and we're going to Mainnet, and last week we were down in Miami, and we're going to Bitcoin Magazine's event in March, and CFC, like all these things. So we're in it. How many people actually know that Solana went down, or like that's this kind of core group of people. I think you're right, which is it's going to move to the most trustworthy. Things will move to the most trustworthy place, and Bitcoin can keep that theme, the move glacially slow and designed for inevitability. They're gonna get a lot of that stuff. But meanwhile, there's 1,000 companies that have to exist outside that. And if you look at stablecoins as a good example, it started on Omni, on Bitcoin's network, because that's where it was created when Phil Potter invented it, and when he was at Bitfinex and Tether. And then they realized that this stablecoin doesn't care what platform it's on. Stablecoin can be on any platform. So Tether is on, on Ethereum, and then it was on Tron, and then it was on everything. And Tether became its own entity, literally separated from the layer. So why wouldn't NFTs become that? You have your Ether rocks, but do they actually have to sit on Ether? Can you have NFT platforms be floating and pop between whatever is the most trustworthy layer? I don't know. I know enough about. I did meet the CEO of OpenSea this weekend, and fantastic guy, amazing visionary. I mean, like, there could be stuff.
I think he needs a better HR policy.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
The front runner, the guy, you saw about that.
I didn't see the news. I heard there was something. So I'm bad at news because I don't watch the news so much.
Well, this one you can miss on Twitter. So I can't remember which employee. Who was it, Danny? He was like one of the guys in the company was front running the trades, and he kept his job because they didn't have a policy saying you can't front run. Yeah. But I was kind of like...
He's now resigned.
Oh, he's now resigned. Yeah, so he didn't lose his job because they didn't have a policy. And I was like, well, what if he gets caught jerking off in the toilets and they don't have a policy that you can't jerk off in the toilets? Does he keep his job? Like,
do you have a policy at your firm for that?
No jerking off in the toilets.
Okay.
It's just not allowed.
Just so you guys know, there is a policy at McCormick Enterprises.
But like the point being, it was like, it seemed like such a pathetic thing to say. You front run your customers.
Yeah, but that's an employee. That's not the firm. They have to say. They learn from this. I'm guessing, and I don't want to. I think entrepreneurs and CEOs are an important breed, especially in our space. Yeah. To give. I don't want to. I don't know anything about the situation, right? And I do know that that's probably overblown. If I look at most, Dilbert situations, companies are inept in general. So you got to be able to fix. And one of my core theses as a human is that, people that can change their mind are the highest form of human. And then people that can...
People don't like it when you change your mind.
People hate that. That's how you know that it's not an AI, because an AI thinks logically. People are not logical, right? So, the other thing is to give entities or organizations a chance to correct. You don't want to get into this kind of cancel culture for everything. Like, okay, these guys, there was a mess up there. Well, last year, no one even knew NFTs were anything. So, front running. I don't know the policies or what I would have put in, but now it went from 0 to a bazillion in no time. So, as a CEO, how can we know all the policies to put in place?
What I mean is it was major news. I think you should have been fired.
Yeah,
perhaps it's some HR thing because we don't have a policy, therefore I can't fire him. But
definitely in some European countries that would definitely have been the case.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to fire someone in Europe, especially if they've had a job for two years.
Yeah, there's you can't do anything.
You literally cannot do anything.
You totally suck, but we're going to keep you on for another
forever
2 years of sucking for no reason. So.
And if you work for the government, you get to stay for another 40 years and get full pension.
Well, I want to remember, because we were talking about the market transformation stuff, and I have a key metaphor that I want to say.
Okay.
Just go backwards. Is that we talk about Silicon Valley, this kind of concept, and I just wanted to mention that, like, I was an investment banker at UBS, and I was doing like fintech in Europe. And it's like, oh, this is bollocks. Excuse my British. It's just how did I do? So
that's pretty good.
This is bollocks because it's boring. It's like you're going to do fintech and it's payments. That's what fintech was.
Yeah,
you're paying people. And like I was like, oh, I want to do something that's meaningful and maybe it should be in life science and then I went to Sweden and I did venture capital for a while before I did venture capital with Humla and XBTO. And that was exciting times. But now Bitcoin changes. So now Internet of Money is a human transformation concept. So we're investing in these cool things. But here's the analogy: is that if you were in venture capital in the 90s and the 2000s, like we can all agree that would have been a great time to be a venture capitalist.
Very good.
Like you made a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Like if you were an LP in Madrona, and they found the first investment for Amazon, that was a good fund to be in. Or you were in Excel when they found Facebook, one of the in Google or whatnot. Those were amazing times. And if you think about Amazon and Netflix took Blockbuster out. Amazon took out first Barnes and Noble, and then everything in consumers, everything else, everything. And Google took out a new concept called search. I mean, they took out Yahoo, and then they made search
Alta Vista.
They make a new concept, and essentially TV advertising is now minuscule.
Yeah,
because most people will get their advertising via Google or the internet in some way. That was a $1.5 trillion market that got transformed in this venture capital era of the 90s and the 2000s. $1.5 trillion. I say, okay, well, now we're done. Like venture capital's done. Why would we be in that business? That's my business, my day-to-day life. And then we fast forward and say, like, what about financial markets? Mm-hmm. If you think about asset management, investment products, contracts and trade payments, banking, wealth management, this whole financial markets thing, that's a $22.5 trillion market that's about to get the same decimation that happened in the consumer markets. And what are the VCs that are targeting that space? I mean, there's like 5 of us or 15 of us. I mean, now there's a lot of new VCs coming up, but do they have the ability for liquidity and network and the relationships that we have already? So there's a lot of Me Too's as well. But this is an order of magnitude bigger opportunity in venture capital and for us as a community of people having fun and with good relationships.
What is the transformation?
Huh?
Is it 24/7, 365 markets? Is it final settlement of assets?
Finality. I mean, like, that's what we said. We were talking about, like, what's happening? Is it the transformation markets? Transformation markets is critical to our thesis. With Internet of Money, Bitcoin, blockchain, AI, communications. These 3 things are going to transform markets, identity, all that kind of stuff. So that's a huge opportunity people say, oh, why don't you just do coins and that kind of stuff? Well, there's a lot of companies that have to exist, just like, in the gold rush, you had Levi's and Wells Fargo and, those are the companies you remember from the gold rush. You don't remember the mining company that, went up there in Lake Tahoe and it's like, pulling gold out. So this is the first step, but that financial transformation is going to change everything in society. Because what happens when we have permissionless, like NFTs, they sound like, I don't understand them completely, but you can own a thing besides Bitcoin or another that is sitting outside of any jurisdiction.
Share certificate.
Yeah, it's a share certificate, essentially, of an asset.
What happens with the legal enforcement of share certificates in those scenarios?
You mean NFTs or?
Yeah, so if your share certificate was an NFT and you're holding it on your ledger.
That's cool. That's a good idea.
It's cool. It's interesting idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the idea of that.
If you're an entrepreneur doing that, send me your pitch.
No, but imagine we were having dinner and you're like, you should invest.
Better be a good dinner. Steaks.
It'd be a good dinner.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
And you're like, did you want to invest in XBTO? And I was like, yeah. And you're like, well, I can save you $10,000 of my shares, and I send you $10,000 of Bitcoin, and you send me the NFT of the share, like in that moment.
Right, yeah.
Like what I'm saying is that the fact that we can do that peer to peer, and I have,
it's like Carta to the next level.
Yeah, I have that asset.
You have the cap table, and you can actually hit a button, and then you get all these.
But those
are not NFTs. Really, they're more fungible. Well, it's semi-fungible.
Semi-fungible. But the point being is
SFNFTs.
But what's the
new coin term?
What's the how's that legal enforced? Where's the legal enforcement of that come from? That's what I.
Well, you choose. I mean, in any contract, you choose your jurisdiction, right? You either choose or you're by default. Like we're here, and if we make a personal agreement right now, like a verbal agreement, it's legally enforceable in the United States.
Okay.
And we're in the United States, so it would be the default jurisdiction. I'm guessing. I'm not a lawyer, but or we can say, let's agree that our agreement is in some jurisdiction. You can't have a non-jurisdictional enforceable contract unless it's a smart contract, because then it's not having it's having a computer do it.
Yeah. Which
is really cool.
What's the role of the SEC in all of this? Because sometimes I feel like they would claim they bring order to markets. Sometimes I feel like they hold markets back. Certainly on the ETS side of things at the moment, they seem to be holding the US back.
Well, we want that to go. We invested in Valkyrie, so we're really excited. I mean, those guys, Leah and Steve are amazing entrepreneurs.
Amazing.
You met, I thought Steve was on here, right?
Love both of them. Yeah, I came with Steve to your place. And I haven't seen Leah for a while, but I think they're great.
Yeah, heroic team. And we're actively, supporting that. And so I'd like to see them do it. So what's the question?
What's the role of the SEC in this?
What's the problem with the SEC, or what is their role?
In this transformation of markets and hyper-Bitcoinized world, does the SEC become delegitimized, or is it important to have? Or is it important to have? Because you also then say you like rules.
Well, I don't say I like rules. I say we need rules to play a game.
Yeah.
I'm the last person to say I like the rules. I'm just saying that I need to know what the rules are in order to win the game.
But do we want rules centralized by someone like the SEC?
Well, if it's in the transformation, I think we have horizons. There's like the 1 and 2 year horizon. There's the 10-year horizon, and then there's the 20 infinity horizon. And it's easy to predict things maybe in the kind of like a 5 to 10 horizon, but it's really hard infinity, and it's hard in the 1, right? Or maybe some people say it's easier in the 1. What's the SEC's role? That's a really good question. The SEC's role is clearly, out for the consumer, and I think that's their actual, they believe that. They want that to be the case. Now, if they have the internal tool sets and the knowledge and the incentive systems to do that properly, I think the biggest problem in most society, in most people, is incentive systems. A lot of people in politics, I won't say which side or whatnot, just lack the understanding that incentives drive humans. If you put the wrong incentives in, you get the wrong results, period. It doesn't matter if you want this to be the case because it's good for the ESG reason or the financial reason or the social reason. The incentives drive human behavior. It's like if I give you a cookie, you're gonna do something to get that cookie. If I give you a poison, you're gonna do something to avoid that poison.
I definitely want the cookie.
I didn't bring any cookies. I did bring it.
You bought bloody liver.
Did I bring it? I did actually.
You liver, but no cookies.
I brought the
beef liver.
It's the carnivore alias, but it's very healthy. This is like the most nutritious food on the planet.
I don't think I'm going to ever walk around with beef liver. I'll have my.
I think we're going to get to the transformation of everything. The human, the health hacking.
Well, we should. But I did like that point whereby you were saying previously about. It's almost like you were talking
Don't judge me because I eat liver.
It was like you were talking about proof of work, basically. And that's the great thing about Bitcoin.
I love proof of work.
The great thing about Bitcoin is the incentive system.
Yeah. Very well. That's the most well thought out incentive system of all time.
Because it's one, rather than having a room of 10 people creating complex rules that try and make everything balanced for hundreds of millions of people, what you've got is a small system with 2 or 3 very important rules that everyone else has to adapt to.
It's like parenting.
Yeah.
You can't give your kid 100 rules. There's 3 or 4. Stick with those.
Figure everything else out.
Everything else you got to figure out. Good judgment better be one of them. But
But listen, transformation of everything. There's so many things I'm interested. The two ones I'm primarily interested in is transformation of governance. I've talked a lot about the show. I'm not an anarcho-capitalist.
Right. I forgot the guy's name. What was his name?
I've said it so many times. But and the other thing is the transformation of media. Like for me, the mainstream media
needs to happen.
Yeah, it needs to happen. It's an absolute fucking shit show right now.
Will it self-correct, or does it need something, a catalyst?
I think the economics changed because the advertising model's changing.
Well, the economics for them totally has gone upside down.
Yeah, and I think people...
They only get their money from pharmaceutical companies.
Well, I think people realize they're being lied to more and more, and there's other sources they can trust. But there is also a war between the mainstream media and the independents. You know, Joe Rogan does something, the mainstream media attacks him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's an interesting war at the moment.
All the independent, and that's why I like the Twitter sphere so much.
Yeah.
Like even just like Srinivas, you know, he's a VC guy that does deep research. He ends up being a better journalist than any actual journalist.
Yeah, which is great. And we've got a lot of people like that. But it's just, I think a lot of the... poor discourse in society, we've attributed some to social media. I think we have to actually attribute it to the media companies.
Corporate media.
I'll
call it corporate media.
Which is pretty much all the majority of media. I mean, look, I get...
Well, the old days, there was a big guy that owned the media, and then he sold it to the corporations. Yeah. Now it's like essentially middle management in their incentives. You know, their incentives are profit and appeasing their boss. There's no incentives to help them do good media.
With lower margins.
Lower margins.
There's some stuff I like in the FT that I think's okay, but they cover Bitcoin badly.
I think they have a couple different tracks on Bitcoin,
Yeah, there's some things I think that Reuters and Associated Press do that I trust more than other sources.
Okay, yeah.
But also some of the more independent stuff seem to be less independent because it's very hard to pick a source.
But I don't know if I'm going to answer a question the way you want me to. I don't know the answer to this. I think it's a huge problem. I think most of corporate media is a poison. You know, not that it's wrong or right, that it just has bad incentive systems, and there's just impossible to give any sort of knowledge in 7 minutes. I mean, that's the biggest problem. Is it's not a medium that works. But you know, Innovator's Dilemma, which is Clay Christensen's great work from decades ago. I'm a student that was my consulting before I became a banker, is that, you know, the innovator is almost never the incumbent. It just doesn't happen, right? And the incentives don't work. You know, if you're making $1 billion on this product, you're not going to invent the product that puts that $1 billion revenue source out of business. And I think we're at that moment where there's a lot of people trying to do new media. The obvious one is your business. You know, Peter McCormick, you and Joe Rogan and all these other, I don't know which ones you like or don't like, but there's the podcasting world is platform independent, and it's become a new media source, which is fantastic. This long format, it's probably the most valuable part of media I can imagine. Is long format podcasting is the most valuable thing that the society has right now.
Well, it scales.
It scales. It's there forever. It's good financially for you. Perfect incentives. It's good for us, the people that are blessed to have the invitation from you. It's good for the viewer. Long format has a whole... You get through all the stuff the PR firm told you to say in like the first 5 minutes. You know, like, okay, now what? So you have to get to the real stuff. You know, if someone's not accepting a long format interview in politics or media or whatever, you have to be questioning, like, why? What are they scared of? Like, what is the reason that we're not going deep, you know?
And I think it's trying to watch two people wrestle through a difficult subject is something that I think a lot of people can relate to. There's a lot of complicated problems in society right now.
Yeah.
COVID is hugely complicated.
Yeah.
How to manage COVID, how to manage hospitals, vaccines, do they work, don't they work, what age do they work, are they damaging for some people, not damaged for others? There's a lot of complexity.
And there's no actual answer to any of those.
No, of course.
That's the thing that everyone's missing, is that one media source may say there's an answer, and are they actually right?
Well, so I'm not going to discuss the topic now, but
Right.
an interesting one recently, and I've received a lot of emails asking me to discuss it.
He did say but. I'm not going to.
Well, no, I'm not going to debate it. Well, so the topic of abortion has come up again recently because of the heartbeat law in Texas. And I've had maybe 15 emails saying, Pete, will you touch on this topic?
Yeah.
And I haven't. And I think there's no answer, because you either believe you are trying to control a woman's body, or you're murdering a baby. And you're one or the other. It's basically one or the other.
Hot potato subject. Yeah.
And it's an unwinnable.
And what do you know? What do we know?
What do we know? How do you get to you can't understand everything a woman's going through. You can't understand every scenario of an abortion. You can't understand. It's too much to understand. And if you take a position, then you're going to piss someone off. But at least if you're wrestling with these subjects and you go through the complexities, you're doing an infinitely better job of the media and the politicians and the social media grifters who weaponize these arguments. They
weaponize like a statement.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's what's great. If you can get two really smart people that know about that subject.
Or a smart one and a moron. We'll take a smart and a moron.
Yeah, or maybe two people that aren't us that actually understand that topic that you just brought up. Like I'm like so far out of my wheelhouse talking about those. I mean, of course we have opinions, but and I think that the right people to talk about those are two experts, probably two women experts.
Yeah, probably.
It's.
But my point being is there are so many complex problems.
Yeah.
And
but on both sides, because there's women on both sides of all those issues.
Yeah.
It's not us saying that they're, and for people to realize that there's huge cultures and huge countries that have completely different opinions.
But the long form allows you to watch two people wrestle with that. Yeah. And, you can watch one, you can find out if you like someone, you think they're authentic or they're not, and you skip them in the future. Like I said, I mentioned earlier, I've got Jack Murphy later on today. He was just on Tim Paul's show, and they were talking about vaccines for the kids, and he doesn't want to have his kid vaccinated, but if he doesn't get vaccinated, he can't play varsity sports. And he's wrestling with it. And Tim was like, stand up for this. He's like, yeah, but this is my kid. It was so authentic to see him wrestling with that.
It's a huge problem.
Rather than going on Twitter and just having a weaponized binary statement.
It makes me super emotional. Thinking about things that we're pressuring our kids to do that I just don't know the answer to. Mm-hmm. Do you know if it's going to be good for them long-term or short-term? For me, I can make a decision. I'm like, okay, for me, I want to travel, so I will, maybe I'll do it, or maybe I think it's going to save my health. I make my own decision. But if we have a minor kid, I really don't want to do anything that's going to harm him long-term. So I can understand his wrestling.
Well, because there's going to be some parents out there who don't vaccinate their children and they get COVID, very tiny amount, but they're going to have problems from contracting COVID. Very small number. From COVID. And equally, there are going to be some parents who are going to vaccinate their children. And a very small number are going to have a problem.
With the vaccination.
Neither is zero risk. And so...
actually, both of them are really close to zero risk. It's like the statement
is opposite. It's a rounding error.
But it's a rounding error whether they're going to be risky with COVID or without, from what I've read, at least.
But the examples become weaponized.
Yes.
Depending on which side of the argument are. So you'll see about a 4-year-old girl getting COVID and dying, and you'll see about a 4-year-old girl, a 12-year-old having the vaccine and being crippled.
Having a heart issue or something like that.
Yeah, so the very tiny...
And didn't the NHS just said that they're doing some sort of research on women's effects on women's reproductive...
there's lots of things. So
there's a lot of unknowns.
And when we have biases and people are trying to weaponize it rather than going through nuance... That's really complicated, and I don't think there are enough people out there saying, "Hey, I don't fucking know. This is really hard."
Right.
But there's a lot of people out there going, "This is definitely wrong."
Yeah, I think you can discount anyone that says definite.
Yeah.
There's nobody. I mean, and I think you get into this whole science question, because the whole definition of science is questioning.
Yeah.
Assumption, questioning the known.
Yeah.
There's no scientific revolution in the history of man that wasn't some guy, one single person, not a consensus, a single person that went against the norm of the science of the moment. Copernicus, Einstein, Galileo, and all these history of scientists, most of the Nobel Prize winners at one point in their career were critiqued for even saying different from the consensus. So the whole concept of science is to question the existing thing. So if you have a good scientist, it's not necessarily like automatically agreeing with everybody to get funding. It's the one that's going against the. So we need to incentivize that somehow.
And everything's changing.
Everything's changing.
Everything's changing.
And science is, and I think that we're having a moment in time where things are changing so rapidly, like the internet time of the 90s and the 2000s. I was doing, startups then, compared to now is slow. Our sector, like Bitcoin and Internet of Money and crypto, and it's all moving so fast. And that's in turn forcing the hand of all these politicians and CEOs of big companies that don't know anything that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. They're watching all of a sudden a zero market to a $3 trillion market in less than a decade. And that's, we're 3 out of the 22.5 trillion already, and we haven't even gotten going yet. So, and that's going to affect, the banks are going to affect the politicians are going to affect the people, the government structures, like we talked about. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, government structures are at risk because people are not sure how there's always the intended technological risk. There's a secondary risk, and then, not risk,
effect,
secondary effect, and then the tertiary effects. Mm-hmm. The internet was invented, to share files, but it ended up being used for email first, and then eventually for the web. The internet was not invented to have web or email. It was invented to share files. Mm-hmm. And now we've seen that our whole life has changed from the tertiary effect, not the primary. Mm. So Internet of Money is going to, I think that's what we're talking about, is that Bitcoin has sparked a series of changes, which include all shitcoins. Mm-hmm. All the shitcoins are part of the Bitcoin revolution that Satoshi Nakamoto initiated. And it's just snapping down society all the way to El Salvador. A person in a small town in a village is affected by it already. And we haven't even gotten started.
Got to get you down there, man.
Yeah, I got to go, for sure.
Go down there.
We haven't even started. It's like and I think, and it goes full circle to how can we make a change? Like, what's important to do? Mm-hmm. I actually find my job, running the fund, investing is important because we're investing in companies and good people that are making change for the future, which are, half the world is unbanked. And we need all these tools for the potential new rules that will be created. But what everyone can do is really focus on their personal responsibility. Go down and look inside and say, how can I be a better person? How can I manage my health? How can I manage my own everyday? I like the word responsibility. Mm-hmm. What are you doing for yourself? Not for. There's also the people around you, but that's why I like this kind of biohacking, my own body and mental hacking. I spend a lot of time thinking about ethics and the principles of Eastern Buddhism or something like that, and it all kind of that's the origin. That's the origin of making the right choices, and I feel there's not many people. There's not enough people, especially in government, that I feel who's wise. That's the big question I have, Mike, is where is society getting wisdom from right now? In the old days, you'd have this whole set of older generation, which you think have collected wisdom and they've gone through hardship or not, and they've collected wisdom, and you could turn to them. And, do we look at our baby boomer generation that's running the government, and which one of them would you say is our guru or our wisdom? I think I do see some wisdom in this next generation, maybe the Xers. There's some people I can identify.
Ron Paul?
Yeah, maybe. I think that. I don't watch enough of the sound bites from those guys, mm-hmm. But I do think that wisdom is the most valuable currency that we have.
I struggle to think of a single politician
Isn't that scary?
Who is anything beyond some kind of virtue
Sycophantic,
signaling,
like
rent seeker. I mean, AOC,
yeah,
Met Gala, tax address. It's just the most obvious statement of bullshit that you will ever see.
right.
Whereas before, I've seen her give quite impassioned speeches about protecting the poor and
Right.
immigrants, and whether you're a lefty or not, it felt authentic, and it's just lost. The message is now it's dead. I mean,
Right.
she's politically dead to me. She might keep some of her political capital, but she's politically dead to me. And,
Right.
And there's people I've met in the Bitcoin world. I like them because of Bitcoin. I like Cynthia Lamis and I like Warren Davison, and hopefully I'll meet Ted Cruz, and maybe I think he's all right. But
Right.
there's very few. There was things about Mitt Romney I kind of liked at one time.
Yeah, maybe.
But you can name any one person, there's going to be someone listening and go, yeah, but he did this.
Right.
But-
Well, I mean, and that's just another element that humans are fallible, right?
But Ron Paul is the
You're
only
not going to
one.
find someone that's the Buddha. Everything they do is perfect. You're going to find people that have good things and bad things. I just want to find some wisdom in our leadership. You know?
Ron Paul is like the one person,
Yeah.
right? Consistently, every time I've watched him speak and debate, I'm like, you are principled in the right way.
I think I could agree with that, maybe.
But there's very little else. And then people go, well, Pete, why the fuck are you a status? It's just like, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's terrible in the UK. We have nobody.
Yeah, I think it is definitely a deep philosophical question about our leadership and our own personal leadership. Because you don't actually, there was a really interesting quote. Who was it by? I think it was Einstein, I think, which said you don't get wisdom unless you seek it. You have to be constantly seeking it, and then you become wise. It's not something like, oh, okay, you're not going to, maybe there's one or two people that get it that way.
But there's no incentive for the smartest and wisest people to go into politics.
No.
To have their lives
Exactly.
exposed,
Right.
to be trashed. And, there's an incentive for people who can't reoperate in the private world to go into...
Well, it's hard to imagine. I mean, politics is a new job. I mean, the state, as you talk about state, the state is a new... You read Sovereign Individual, and there's other books that... I mean, we should talk about my book list.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the state is a new concept. Before the United States, there really wasn't states, right? We had monarchies, and we had the church, and we had, before that, we had like empires and kings, and so it's a new concept. And I think the jury's still out on how well the states work. Maybe Bitcoin, maybe if you pull money away from the government, states can actually work better. Like, how's that for? I mean, that's a potential concept. Like, I think there was if you read Mises, Human Action, or you read Rothbard's What Did Government Do With Our Money? The epic. I mean, no one's going to read Human Action. That book is ridiculous long. But Rothbard's book is readable. But Mises had a good interview where he said that the states are never going to give up money. They've got to be ripped out of their hands. And if that's happening now, maybe states work better. With a really solid, hard money that exists outside of the state system. That could be interesting. I mean, that's why it's the best of, I don't know.
Do you know of any?
Huh? Yeah, I've never heard of it. I don't know. Maybe. There's a candidate. There's a candidate out there. But if that's why it's really hard to talk about the state of the world, because there's a lot of suffering, and I have a lot of empathy for all these problems that, COVID, and there's a lot of oppression, there's a lot of authoritarianism, there's a lot of pain and disease and stuff like that. But it's also a moment of massive change, and change is usually good for us. So things are changing. So it's entertaining in some way, because with the empathy at the same time, because we're kind of in the know. I feel like, Bitcoin and the additional of permissionless networks and decentralized systems mean that we're kind of we're participating in the change instead of just getting hit in the head by it. And it's coming in a big way. I mean, it's already coming. It's already there, right?
Well, we're going full circle back to the start.
Right.
Because it's the shift in money, which is required because Bitcoin fixes things.
Yeah.
But that also causes that shift in people. I feel like a lot of alignment with a lot of the people I get to hang around in the Bitcoin world. They've had a shift in values that not everyone's the same, but there's some similarities.
Sure.
And this desire to have like a better world with a lower time preference and
just the time preference is great.
Yeah, and that shift.
Well, I like the metaphor, and I'm working on some writing and stuff like this around this, which is the concept of investing. You know, you think of me as a venture capitalist. Okay, I'm investing in these things, but if you think of it much broader, it's like we're investing. If you invest in yourself or your spirituality or your health, investment is a super valuable word. You invest in, that's a time preference word. You know, it's not spend. You know, you're going to invest in your health when you go to the gym, or if I choose to eat my beef liver, you know, I'm choosing a very high, you know, like a vitamin-rich source at the moment versus a Twinkie, for, you know, that I got, or I invest in my son. You know, I really, really love my son, and I want to spend time with him, and I'm gonna cry, and I want the best for him. Yeah. So, you know, and my friends and my colleagues, you know, I'm super blessed to work with the people that I work with at XBTO. And investing, if you think of every minute of your life and every dollar or Bitcoin you spend, you know, in my mind, Bitcoin is my unit of account, but is an investment, then you always think of that time preference return. And if you don't spend any time today on teaching your kid wisdom or espousing wisdom, then that's wasted. You know, you didn't invest in that. Or if you didn't spend any time today working on your health and you didn't invest in that, your time preference is negative. So you're compromising your future every moment if you're not completely present with your investments. So it's I don't know. For me, it's really a powerful thing to think about. Yeah. Yeah. So.
Well, listen, man. It was great to have you here.
Yeah, it's awesome. It was a lot of fun.
I knew this would be great. Like, all those times there's a few times I've had the pleasure of sitting down with you and having a drink, or like say having tacos and just talking. And I've been bugging you for a few months now to say, come on, let's do this.
It's epic, man. We got to do this again.
I know.
It's so good.
Hopefully with David Beckham.
Yes. At least we'll have one handsome guy in the room.
Yeah, if we can fit him in. Yeah. But dude, love you. Thank you. Appreciate you coming on, and I'm glad you're a friend. I'm glad I've got to know you. And
amazing.
We will do this again because it was such a pleasure. Yeah.
And your team is amazing.
They really are.
He's actually traveling with one hotel room, and there's 4 people in this room, so I don't really know how that works. But
wow, I'm very fortunate to be surrounded by such amazing people that make these jobs easy.
I'm so grateful for you and for this, you know, this opportunity, and really just some credit to you beyond, you know, inviting me. That's really nice. But I think you do really important thing for Bitcoin and everyone in the decentralized space.
Thank you.
Because you are an entry point. And even though you're my friend, and before we met, you know, when I meet somebody and I say, oh, they want to learn about this space, you know, your podcasts are like starting point. You know, because you are speaking it from you approach it in such a open way. I think you're very skilled at this, so some compliments to you. I'm grateful.
Thank you, man.
Cheers.
Appreciate it. All right. Listen, tell people where they can find you. What's your Twitter?
My Twitter is at Prophet, so it's PROPH, and then the number 3, and then TTT.
Okay.
And then you can go to our 2 websites, which is xbto.com, and then the fund is humlaventures.vc or XBTO Humla Ventures.vc. If you are an entrepreneur with a great idea and you're a good person, send us your pitch. If you're a LP and you want to invest into the ecosystem alongside some really amazing, fun people like us, then reach out. You know, we'd love to work with you guys. And it's great.
Awesome, man. Well, listen.
Hey.
We need to go to see Inter Miami play.
We're going to go to a game for sure.
Yeah,
you got to come down.
My shirt, man. And see you soon. And look, all the best with everything.
Oh, thanks, my friend. Cheers.